president currently stands through 2022 calls for increases, as you know, but I've also said that over time we need to get the government out of this business. So by 2022, while everyone has a lot of time to adjust, we need the government out of all kinds of subsidies, whether it's sugar or whether it's the deductions that have advantage away on gas.
Ms. Fiorina, yesterday at the Young Americans Foundation, Sarah Palin said, quote, "We want candidates and we need candidates to tell us what they think." That's kind of lacking in her campaign. That's been a criticism of your campaign, not only from Sarah Palin, but from others. So can you talk to Sarah Palin and other people who are doubting specifics of your campaign and respond to that?
I've been more specific than any other candidate. Did you listen to the speech I just gave?
Yes, I
was
did.
extremely specific.
What were three of the specifics that you gave?
Let's see, zero-based budgeting, 73,000 to 3 pages, repeal Obamacare.
How do you expect to do
Specific
that?
than anyone else.
Do you have specific plans to be able to do that?
Carly,
Going off of the Reverend's, what he was talking about with criminal justice reform, I know you're quoted talking about community building and that individuals need stake and belief in their community. But how will you, as a big president, affect even the smallest community? Also, I wanted to know if my warranty on my 1998 HP printer is still good.
Probably not your warranty,
Oh, okay.
no, but my guess is it's still working.
There we go.
I'm not sure I understood all the aspects of your question, but let's just start with criminal justice reform,
Okay.
which is how you started. Criminal justice reform is working. We have the highest incarceration rates in the world today. 2/3 of the people in jail are there for nonviolent offenses. Clearly, we need criminal justice reform, and this is a place where our judicial policies aren't always applied externally. I mean, I support the death penalty, but there's loads of evidence that the death penalty is not applied. And so I think this is an issue where there is actually a fair amount of bipartisan support. There hasn't been many results, but there's clearly bipartisan support, and we need to push forward because we're not helping people, particularly those people who are in jail for drug-related offenses. If they're dealers, that's one thing. If they're someone who is in jail for reasons of possession, we're not helping them, we're not helping society, and we're not helping rebuild communities either.
Carly, you remain in the low single digits in the polls here in Iowa. What do you need to do between now and the caucuses? Is there time for you to turn it around?
Yes, and nobody's voted yet, and we're very happy with where we are because we're further ahead than anyone expected us to be. We're tied with people who have spent millions and millions on television, and we haven't spent any in Iowa, and so nobody's voted yet. I'm very pleased with where we are.
Fiorina, you said that you haven't spent any money in Iowa. Are you planning to spend any money in Iowa? I'm assuming on television.
There will come a time. There will come a time for. I didn't mean we haven't spent any money in Iowa. We've spent money in Iowa. I said we haven't spent television money
Yes,
in Iowa. And a lot of other people have spent a lot of money so far, and we're tied with them, and we haven't spent any yet. Yes,
you
of
plan to
course, there will
spend
come a time when we
Is
spend
there a
money in
specific
Iowa.
time?
No, not that I'm prepared to share.
Carly, so after the San Bernardino shooting, do you think we should reassess any of the visa programs? One of the shooters came in on the K-1 fiancé visa program. Do you think we should halt those at all? Or?
Well, I think we should be examining all of our
now we are.
immigration programs, and yes, we ought to be taking a look. I find it, frankly, offensive that President Obama said from the Philippines that Republicans who objected to his Syrian refugee policy were giving the jihadists a recruitment tool. When what we were expressing, what I have been expressing, is a common sense problem that we have. If we cannot vet people, then we're going to add to the problem we have. Long before San Bernardino, the head of the FBI was saying the FBI was, quote, overwhelmed by the number of potential radicalized extremists in this country wishing to do the nation harm. And of course, this man and his wife were not even on their radar. We now know that a woman and a child do not necessarily guarantee that someone isn't prepared to do harm. This was a man, his wife, and their 6-month-old baby, and they were radicalized and left that baby behind. By the way, it's unbelievable to me that literally, as San Bernardino is going on, President Obama and Hillary Clinton are talking about gun control. And a couple days before, while in Paris, the site of a horrific terrorist attack, President Obama is talking about climate change. Hillary tweeting about gun control when San Bernardino is clearly a terrorist action is a little bit like we're talking about a videotape after Benghazi. If it doesn't fit their narrative, they don't want to tell the truth. Benghazi was a purposeful terrorist attack, not a spontaneous demonstration created by a videotape. San Bernardino was a terrorist attack. It happened in the state with the strictest gun control laws in the nation. But it doesn't fit their narrative that terrorism is on the wane and ISIS is contained. Terrorism is on the rise and ISIS is not contained. It is here now in the homeland.
Ms. Fiorina, do you think the USA...
Well, not clear because that program didn't help prevent the Boston Marathon attack, as an example. But I actually think this is an example of a political discussion between people who really don't understand technology. I come from the world of technology. Technology has moved a long way since the Patriot Act in 2001. In fact, there are technologies today that didn't exist 3 years ago. Encryption technologies, for example, which we've all been talking about. There are a couple things that I would do immediately. One, I would stand up centralized command in the government to deal with cyber terrorism and warfare. Number two, I would create the right kind of legal framework for collaboration between the public and the private sector, which is critically important. Number three, I would bring the private sector in to sit down and say, hey, this is 2015. There are technologies that exist today that we didn't dream of in 2001. What can the private sector do to help government detect some of these situations, given where technology is moving? That having a discussion about a 2001 old act or something that happened 2 months ago, I think this is the point. We are the most sophisticated technological nation in the world. We can solve this problem. The government can't solve it without innovation, and the private sector is going to have to help because that's where the innovation comes from. Yes, you had a question. Go ahead.
Rand Paul earlier today suggested that you were naive in saying that you're not going to talk to Putin in Russia if you were to become president. What's your response to that?
Well, there's a time for talk and there's a time for action, and I can assure you I am not naive. I have a great deal more foreign policy experience than Rand Paul. I have a great deal more real-world experience than Rand Paul. There's a time to talk and there's a time to act. Ronald Reagan walked away from Reykjavik, and it was a breakthrough. The problem is we are talking to Putin now from a position of weakness, thanks to this president and our former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and our current Secretary of State John Kerry. We're talking from a position of weakness. Why do I say that? Because when President Obama met with Vladimir Putin, John Kerry met with the Russian foreign minister, they just neglected to mention that they were moving in troops and fighter jets. They didn't tell them in the course of a conversation that occurred 2 days before a demarche was delivered to an Iraqi embassy. In other words, they lied to our faces. So obviously talk isn't doing any good. Yes, we need to have military coordination so that as we create a no-fly zone, which I think we should, our jets are not having problems. But on the other hand, the president-to-president communication isn't doing us any good if Vladimir Putin thinks we're weak. And he does right now, because this administration has made us weak. So I'll talk to Vladimir Putin when it's time. But first, I'll begin rebuilding the First Fleet, that is the Sixth Fleet. Second, I'll begin rebuilding a missile defense program in Poland. Third, I'll make it clear that we will fly our jets whenever and wherever we want, in a Syrian no-fly zone or in Iraq. And finally, I'll conduct regular military exercises in the Baltic states so that Vladimir Putin understands that we value our NATO alliances and we will defend territory. And that was a very specific answer.
Can I follow up on a